Hey everyone. This video is going to explain exactly what you're required to do for your survey report. This is your final project for this class and it is worth 25% of your grade. This report is really a culmination of the last two assignments that you've done, because you did the the pitch proposal document that was supposed to serve as the topic of your survey, and then you've completed your survey and sent it out for results to come back in for data that then you can use for your final survey report. So this is really the last of a three-piece assignment that is going to be kind of the culmination of everything that you've done pretty much since we've gotten back after the spring break and then the extended spring break. So this report is going to be very similar to the other reports that you've done. Things don't really change that much whenever you're presenting data and presenting research. The format basically kind of remains the same. But the difference with this is you're taking data that you have gathered, not just an interview, not just secondary source data, but you're taking primary source data that you have gathered through your survey, and then you're putting that data together and making it meaningful for someone who's going to ultimately look at this report. So you're going to analyze the responses from your survey, and then either as a team or individually, depending on what your circumstances, you're going to write a report that presents your work and your findings in words, but also using graphs. So you will have to take some of the data that you've collected and make that into visualizations, and to visualize the data so that people can not just see the words that you're writing, but they can also understand what it is that you are writing about. So in your report, you're going to include Excel graphs that pertain to the most significant findings from your survey, which is your visualization. And then you will do a survey. You will have your survey report, which your preliminary draft is due technically on Sunday, and then your final draft is due next Wednesday. I'll go back and look at that timeline and make sure that everything works so that you can actually submit all of this stuff and have it be on time. So your client here, or your audience, is the client who commissioned the report. Really, your audience is somebody who you are trying to get to care about the data that you're writing about. So several of you, for instance, are writing about telecommuting. So you are going to write this report and recommend, based on the data, if telecommuting is actually a valuable way for people to work. It is a 1,500 word report, so it is lengthier than most of the other documents that you have done so far. So in your report, you're going to organize it in the way that's laid out here. So you'll have your opening statement where you indicate what the purpose is of your document, which we've talked about for every assignment that you've done. You need to let people know why your subject is important, and then what your position is, which is going to be your overall recommendation for your report. Right. So based on the data, you've decided that telecommuting is valuable, or that workers believe telecommuting is valuable, for instance. So you're going to include your position statement there. It should be a very strong position statement. So you'll have your next section which is methodology, sources of data, and limitations, where you're going to describe your survey, the number of questions, how you sent out the survey. You're going to, like, who you sent it to, how you sent it to them, and then the total number of responses that you had. You also need to address any limitations that you may have. For instance, if you sent out you sent out your report or the survey, but you only got responses for people that are between the ages of 18 and 25, then that's a limitation on your data, because you're not getting a full scope of people who are, for instance, in the telecommuting example, you're not getting the full scope of people who work. You're getting the scope of people who work who are between 18 and 25 and all potentially attend UNT or whatever those limitations may be. Within your findings and conclusions section, you're going to support your position by providing information from your section of the survey. That's a clunky sentence. But basically, you're going to do what we've done in all of your other assignments. You're going to, based on whatever your position is, which your position may be that workers enjoy telecommuting, then you're going to include, based on your survey data that you've gotten, that 65% of people feel that, you know, the working from home environment is better than working in an office. And then you're going to indicate why. And then you're going to include potentially some additional research that you found, right? Like you might have additional sources that you want to include there. Since you are basing this on your position or your pitch proposal assignment, it's going to be pretty easy to find some sources. So you could potentially pull in some of those sources if you want to. But you're going to look for the most significant findings, the things that really matter. People are not necessarily going to be interested in seeing, right, all 28 results that you have. They're going to be interested in seeing the overarching idea, which is where your sections are important. Within your survey, maybe you're asking questions about your working environment, and then you're asking questions about productivity. And so those sections that you created may be really good topics for your individual paragraphs that you have within the findings and conclusions section. As you present your conclusions and your recommendations, you need to address at least one anticipated counter argument. So you need to make sure that if you think that, you know, it's a great idea for people to telecommute because workers really enjoy it, then you need to identify what a counter argument might be for that, which is, you know, employers feel that employees are not, or are concerned that employees might not be as productive when they're working from home. But this research suggests that blank, right? So you're presenting something that might be an alternative, that might be a counter argument to the argument that you're making, and you want to address that and then account for that and explain how your data helps with that counter argument, helps to prove that the counter argument maybe isn't valid. So within your findings and conclusions, you do need to include visualizations, which will include a word cloud, which there's multiple different places you can find for that. Go to Google, search word cloud. And then you're going to accompany that with a discussion of the open-ended comments that you received. All of your surveys should have an open-ended question. That's where you're pulling this information from. So if you're asking what, you know, the top 3 words that they would use to describe telecommuting, this is where you would include that information. But basically the word cloud, you're just going to copy and paste what it is that the responses were. You put it into the word cloud, and then it's going to pop up with multiple different words that people said, and the ones that were said most often are going to be larger than the ones that were said least often. You're also going to need to include 3 graphs that you create in Excel. You're going to design the graphs according to the storytelling with data guidelines, which are going to be really just that you want to explain why the story that you're telling is important by showing it with data instead of just telling people it's important. Instead of just saying that employees are more productive when working from home, you're going to indicate that 75% of respondents to your survey indicated that working from home helps them to be more productive, right, if that's your position. You're going to accompany each graph with a discussion of the data as well. You can't just dump in a graph and then move on to the next section. You need to describe that data so that people can really get a full view of what it is you're discussing. Within your closing statement and action program, what steps do you advise the audience to take that are relevant to the survey goals? So if your goal is that you're trying to help employers understand that telecommuting is not as scary as they think it is, then you would make a recommendation and say, I recommend that more companies employ you know, telecommuting, or allow their employees to telecommute if their job allows them to do so, or something like that. So your format, your report is going to be created in Word, and you will convey professionalism in your report. We've had some challenges with students wanting to interject themselves into these final reports that they're writing for somebody else. You are not explaining to them what your personal feelings are. You are explaining to them what your data shows and then providing them a recommendation based on that data. Your text needs to be readable. You need to use headings and subheadings. Those are very, very important. Whenever I'm grading these assignments, organization and formatting is always one of the sections that I grade for. And if you have not included or the headings and subheadings, or you've not organized your information well, you're going to automatically lose points on that. You're going to create your graphs in Excel, and they'll be designed according to the storytelling with data guidelines, which basically just means that you're going to explain, you're going to show them and then you're going to tell them about what the data means. And you also need to make sure you include labels so that people know what it is that that data is about. Because it's very challenging if you just dump a graph in there that doesn't have a heading and or a label, and that also potentially doesn't have a caption. It's hard for people to know what that data is and why that data matters. So whenever I grade this, I'm going to be looking at the same factors I look at for everything, which is your purpose, your audience, your development and support of your argument, your organization and formatting, and your professional ethos. When I look at purpose and audience, I'm looking at, do you have a position statement, and are you writing in such a way that your audience is going to be able to use this report? With development support, I'm making sure that you have given very strong supporting arguments for what it is that you're saying, but then you've also backed those up with the data that you've collected or with your secondary sources. I'm also looking for your organization and formatting. That's where your subheadings, headings, organizing the information in a logical way, including all of the sections that are required. That's where I grade for that part. And then professional ethos is making sure that your tone is appropriate, that you have edited the document, that there are not a ton of spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes. And that's where having somebody else look at the document is going to be really helpful. So you can see all of the due dates for everything in Canvas. I definitely recommend that you go there and check it out. Your preliminary draft is worth 100 points. Your final draft's worth 100 points, kind of as per usual. But it is 25% of your final grade. And I'll figure out what we're going to do with the preliminary draft. You'll be able to see that in Canvas with the dates. Because it is nice for you to be able to do peer reviews, but I also understand that we're on a pretty short timeline. So I'll figure that out, and then I'll let you know what the plan is going to be for that. But this assignment, as I mentioned, is very similar to a lot of the other assignments that you've done for this class. I really, really recommend that you meet with me during office hours if you have questions. Your team is going to have to meet with me about this week anyway. But if you have other questions about the class, if you're missing assignments, need to know what to do, check in with me during office hours, Wednesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. You can also set a different time and you can communicate with me that way. I'm also answering emails pretty regularly too. So just reach out to me. I'm happy to help you. But this is exactly what you're required to do. And really, this report should not be a surprise. Nothing that you're doing in this report is different from what you've done for everything else, with the exception of you're taking the data that you gathered and you're extracting meaning from it, and then you are putting that into your final report. So I look forward to reading your reports, and I look forward to helping you if you need any help at all. So please reach out to me, and good luck.